absolutely crucial to animating stuff coming out of Illustrator or any of the other tools into After Effects. What's crucial is getting your source files all set up to make your life easier in After Effects. Okay? So right now you can see, like I said before, I'm trying to do the absolute hardest way to work, okay, from a tool to After Effects. Photoshop's going to work a lot easier. Illustrator has a concept of artboards. After Effects has no concept of artboards, okay? So I've gone ahead and created these series as separate artboards. So when this gets sucked in, After Effects will only see the first one. So what I need to do is, might be the version of the file that I show to my client, okay? But what I'm going to do is make a new version of the file that's going to be kind of my prep for After Effects. And my prep for After Effects file is going to take all of these elements and stack them on top of each other where they need to be when they're finished. Okay? Does that make sense? So that I can then bring that all into After Effects. Everything's where I need it to be at the end, and then I just animate backwards from that. Okay? So the first thing I'm going to do is kill the extra artboard, and then what I'm going to do is move all these elements on top of this. But anything that's already in this artboard, I'm not going to move over. So like recently watched isn't going to change. The little tab bar down here isn't going to change. And these elements right here, the rock through Bangkok Dangerous, these 4 elements aren't going to change either. They're just going to animate down. Okay? And then what I'm going to do is take in my layers, is make a bunch of layers, name them up so that I'm not going to become a crazy person. So don't just have layer 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Like, give them names that make sense. And in my layers, name the things that I want to do. And then every individual animatable element needs to go in its own layer. So for instance, these 4 elements, the rock, next, Astro Boy, and Bangkok Dangerous, these 4 elements right here, they're going to animate as a group. So while they are 4 things, when I move them down, they're all going to go down together. Okay? So what I've done over here is you can look at my layers. I know this is hard to read for those of you in the back. I don't know if it's possible in a Illustrator to crank up the size that the palettes show stuff. Let me see. No, I don't think so. Sorry, this is not the easiest to read. But that's one of the reasons why I'm recording it. Okay? So here I have a layer called static. And static is the stuff that's never going to change in my animation. So that's the recently watched thing across the top and the tab bar across the bottom. Then I have another layer called disclosure widget. That's what I'm calling the little arrow that's going to flip around and move around. Okay? I have another thing called animated list. Here, I'll go ahead and select these so you can see them. So animated list is these 4 elements. And then I'm going to skip the next couple, and then you can see down here, MISC. This is all this stuff. And then I have a bunch of things that are prefixed with detail page. So I have detail page common sense. That's this collection of the common sense media stuff, so the age rating of the movie. I have a detail page called Rotten Tomatoes. Detail page summary. Detail page movie poster. And I just realized I made a mistake, and that is Ghostwriter right here. This row, this stuff actually never changes from the 2 screens. So I'm going to go ahead and add that to static. Okay, so these are all the things that will never change. Then I have my little disclosure widget. I have the list that slides up and down. I have the common sense thing, the Rotten Tomatoes thing, the summary thing, MISC, which is basically MISC just means stuff that's redundant from the other stuff, because I'm going to be killing this artboard. And then movie detail page. Awesome. Now what I'm going to do is take everything that's over here in this artboard and slap it into this artboard in the right place. So it's basically look really like a jumbled mess of all this stuff on top of each other. But I can just simply show and hide the things that say detail page so I can see what these 2 pages are going to look like. Make sense? Okay? Again, this is all just doing prep work to make sure that your life in After Effects is as smooth as possible. I don't know about you, But I have found this to be true about After Effects. Let me just remind me, how many of you, like, yeah, I have used After Effects more than once? Okay. The rest of you, it's not hard. It's just Photoshop with a timeline. Okay? You'll be all right. Okay? So I don't know about you, but my time in After Effects, I want to limit as much as possible. Okay? It's fine. It's a good tool. It's very powerful, but it's overwhelming and insane. Okay? And it's also, if you've ever used After Effects any length of time, you know this, creating new assets in After Effects is the most insane, bonkers, difficult, banana pants, make you go crazy process in the world, okay? Like, you want to make a text box, that's like 12 clicks in After Effects, right? You want to like make something, it's insane. So instead, I don't want to ever make anything in After Effects if I can avoid it. I want to use these tools I'm already know and love, like Photoshop and Illustrator, make all my stuff over there, and then just bring it into After Effects to add animation to it, okay? So my like stated goal when I'm using After Effects is make nothing. That little file new, I never want to hit that, okay? Like, I don't want to make anything new ever. I want to just be bringing stuff in that already exists using a tool set that is easy for me to use. So got all my crap, so what I'm going to do is kind of stack all these things up on top of each other and then bring them all into After Effects. So that is everything that's called disclosure page. I'm holding down Shift to select multiple layers at the same time. I'm just going to move this over here. And then I look at this artboard. Did I miss anything? For some reason I have an extra Common Sense Media label. We don't need that. All right, so I don't need this artboard at all, which is great. So I can now kill it. And now I have all my stuff stacked on top of each other. I can already see a problem, which is the rock has a little white background behind it in order to block out the bottom edge of the poster when I was designing on that second page. I just need to make that background actually go a little bit longer so that it covers up all this stuff once I bring it into After Effects. So I'll go ahead and do that. Good enough. Okay. So now I'm ready to rock. It looks pretty clean, except you can see a little drop shadow showing through from the movie poster, but don't worry, we'll clean that up. And I just hit save. Now, if I'm doing my job right, I never need to touch Illustrator again for this project. So I'm going to go ahead and quit it. So now I have my After Effects project. There's nothing in it. Sweet, no problem. I'm going to bring in my Illustrator file, and it's going to create everything for me. So I have this file called animation sample After Effects prep.ai right there at the top. Sweet. I hit that. Make sure that you have create composition checked here. If you don't have that option, it's because you haven't turned on options. So you just got to hit options and create composition. What this is going to do is take the first artboard in the Illustrator file and make that a composition. And if you don't remember what in After Effects what a composition is basically a place that you can do animation in. Okay? So composition is just like space. It defaults to a certain number of seconds. It's usually way too long for what we're doing. So we'll tweak that, and we'll kind of make a couple other little tweaks as we go, but we should be good to go. So hit create composition, hit open. I don't want to import as composition. And you can see it comes in, and all of my layers are right here, exactly as I wanted them, which is sweet. Okay. So, believe it or not, I'm going to kill this, because what this is everything flattened. And I don't want everything flattened. I want to keep all my layers there. So I'm going to kill that. And then just one by one, I'm going to just drag all these layers down as new things. Oh, dang it. Hold on. I did something wrong. Please hold. Yep, there we go. I hit footage. I meant to say composition retain layer sizes. That's what I want. Okay. So now when I bring it in, hold on. I just imported the wrong file. that one. As composition to the lattice axis. Open. There we go. Okay. So here's my composition. All my stuff is there exactly as I want it. Everything is in layers. These layers are the same names as my Illustrator file layers. Super sweet, super convenient, totally easy. You can see one major problem, which is my Illustrator file didn't have any background in it. So compositions by default have a black background. So it looks like these, we're sitting in space. So I just need to tweak that. But other than that, it's pretty easy. So to tweak that, I just go in and hit composition settings on the composition and change its background color to white. Okay, looks good. This thing defaulted to 30 seconds long, I think. Or 4. No, never mind. We're good. 4 seconds long. That's an acceptable length of time. So let's go ahead and animate it. So I'm going to make it so that as if a user tapped on Ghost Rider, all these things will slide down first. So all those things that slide down, those were the animated list. They're right here. And this is where the Photoshop with the timeline comes in if you've never used After Effects before. This down here, I wish I could make these things bigger for you to see that are in the back. Are you guys good? Or do you want to move? Are you okay? Okay, great. This right here is all the stuff that's associated with this layer over time. And then if I hit this little disclosure indicator right here, I'm going to move this up so you guys can see it if you're looking over a desk. This little disclosure indicator, this, and then hit transform, this is all the default settings for any asset in After Effects. So the anchor point, that's the point at which everything measures around. So what it scales from, what it rotates from, what it moves from. Position is where it is in X, Y space. Scale is scale, rotation is rotation, and opacity is how transparent it is. So what I'm going to do is just animate the position. And so you hit this little stopwatch timer thing to say, hey, I want to start recording position over time. And so what it did here is it put down a little what we call a keyframe. And keyframes are just what they say on the label. They are key frames. So if this is a bunch of frames of animation, keyframes are the most important frames. Okay? How animation used to be way back in the day is that if I'm working at Walt Disney, I'm some middle-aged white dude. Okay? And what I do is I draw Mickey Mouse with their hand waving on the left-hand side, and then I draw Mickey Mouse waving on their right-hand side, and then I take those two drawings and I hand them off to some underling, typically not a middle-aged white dude, okay? Because remember, this is back in the bad old days of the early 20th century, and that person would animate the frames between those key frames. That person's job, they were called a tweener, not to be confused with somebody who's 11 years old, okay? But a tweener is somebody that animates the tweens. So the frames that are in between the two keyframes. The good news is, now it's not only middle-aged white guys that get to make keyframes, but also the tweens are not generated by a human anymore. The tweens are generated by the supercomputer that we have right here, okay? And so these keyframes I lay down, and then any change I make between different keyframes, the computer will automatically interpolate between. So you can see this is the closed state at frame 0, and I have a little blue diamond right here to tell me this is a keyframe. What I'm going to say is, maybe 1 second, 1001. That's pretty long for something to go down, but let's just say 1 second. I'll move my timeline to the 1 second mark, and then make another keyframe of it down, and then it'll animate between the two. So if I move my timeline to 1 second in, and I hit this little diamond button right here, this little diamond button right here, I now have two keyframes. There's the starting point and the ending point. Nothing will happen between them because I haven't changed anything. But to change it, I can either drag it around up here, or I know for a fact all I want to do is animate it along Y. So I can just click on the Y and slide it down. And let's say I want it to get to about there. And so now, over the course of a second, you can see it animates it down. Make sense so far? Let's zoom in so we can see that better. So over the course of a second, it goes down. Okay. The next thing I want is this movie poster. I don't want it always there. Because if I go back to frame 0, the starting point, I see the little drop shadow from the movie poster there, and it looks not great. So what I'm going to do is make it so that the movie poster starts out at 0 transparency, so you don't see it at all, okay? And then I'll animate it in, so it'll basically fade in over time. So I go down to my layer, and I select the movie poster, detail page movie poster right there, expand it, transform, opacity. That's really low for those of you in the back. Hold on. And I'm going to move I'm hitting spacebar to get the little hand to make it easier to pan around. And I'm going to animate so you can see the movie poster there, because I know that that's pretty subtle and hard for you guys to see on the screen. So I'll move it over. There we go. So I want to make it so the movie poster is not 100% opaque at the beginning. So I'm going to move my timeline back to the starting point. Say I want to start animating opacity. Move to the 1 second mark. And hit the same little diamond. Come on, man. Really? All right, well, sorry you can't see this because the interface with the TV is in the way, but hit the little diamond. And now I have another keyframe here. And so I want to go back to frame 0 at starting point and crank the opacity down to 0. And so now not only does the thing move down, but the poster fades in. Make sense so far? Sweet. Okay? I'm going to do the same thing with the Rotten Tomatoes, the Common Sense, and the Summary, is make them fade in. And then we'll add some more cool animation in a second. So I want Common Sense, Rotten Tomatoes, and Summary all to behave exactly the same. So I'm selecting them all. I'm just going to do the exact same thing that I did with that. Only if I have them all selected, I can do the same thing to all of them at once. So I'm going to move to frame 0, hit opacity, move to frame 1 second, add a keyframe, go back to 0, and set them all to 0. And so now it expands and they fade in. So I'm going to make this bigger so you can see it. I see your hand. Give me a second. So let's watch it. Make sure we like the animation. So it expands like that, and they fade in as they're expanding. Okay, this is pretty boring animation, and we haven't done anything with our disclosure arrow. We need to make that kind of move along with the motion and flip around. Okay, but we'll get to that in a second. Did you have a question?
Yeah, can't you copy keyframes and paste them on your lines?
We're going to do that right now.
Okay, cool.
Okay, so when I think about it, the disclosure animation needs to move the exact same amount that these things need to move, right? And I could manually try to get the motion to match, the movement to match, but it's going to be a pain in the ass to do that, okay? Because I got to make sure it's exactly pixel perfect. Otherwise, when it moves down, it's going to like kind of jump and look weird, and that's just too much. That's too hard. So to your point, you can totally copy and paste keyframes. So what I'm going to do is get the motion on the static, or not the motion on the static, but the motion on the animated list, which is right here. And I'm going to take the motion from this and apply it to the disclosure arrow also. So it'll hug the top of this list as it moves down. So I have my animated list. I can just go and click and drag a selection around the 2 keyframes on the animated list. Copy to my clipboard, just with Command-C or Control-C, depending on what platform you're on. Go into the disclosure widget. Go into its position, roll back to the starting point of motion, and paste that in. And so now the disclosure indicator, watch it, should, where'd it go? Oh, it moved it over there. Whoops. Okay. It doesn't work perfectly, I forgot, because it doesn't share the same anchor point. So when it's all delted off the anchor point. So I'm just going to manually animate it. I'll fix it here. So needs to be over here. That X looks about right. And then Y. Put it about there. Go to the last frame. Okay. That's not precise, but it's basically right. Okay. Cool. So now I got my motion. Now here what I don't like. I don't want this just to like go like fade in. I want this to like have some dynamism to it. Okay. So we'll keep this as a starting point, but let's kind of snazz this up. So the first thing we'll do is instead of having all these things fading at the same time, we'll have them fade in sequentially with each other. So we'll have the poster come in, and then the Rotten Tomatoes score, and then the Common Sense Media score, and then the summary fade in. So in order to make that to work, if I want the entire thing to be done at the end of 1 second, I need to compress the length of that fade in. So it goes like 1/3 of a second, 1/3 of a second, 1/3 of a second. There's 4 things. 1/4 of a second, 1/4 of a second, 1/4 of a second, 1/4 of a second. Make sense? Cool. So I'm going to first modify the poster. And we'll have the poster come in first. So we'll say it'll come in to about this point in time. And then I want the Rotten Tomatoes score to come next. So it doesn't start animating, so I'm going to drag it 0 keyframe over, and its end keyframe to about another 1/4. I'm just kind of eyeballing it so you can see. Oh, I got the wrong thing. That was Common Sense. My bad. Common Sense is 3rd in the order, so let's scoot this over. And let's get Rotten Tomatoes right there. So now it fades in, the poster comes in, the Rotten Tomatoes score comes in, the Common Sense comes in, and then we'll get the summary last. Cool. So I'll now push this down a little bit. And we'll watch it. Spacebar previews animation. Cool. I like that. I like the fade in, but you know what? Let's say that poster, I want it to not just fade in, I want it to kind of like come in, like it's moving in. So I'm going to kind of tweak it out a little bit. And so not only does the movie poster's opacity come in, but its position is going to animate over time as well. And its initial position will be lower on the screen. So it'll move in opposite direction to the expanding and collapsing thing. And I'm going to break its sequencing out a little bit. So I'm going to make it animate in later. So it fades in. So if you can see any of it, it'll fade in. But the motion will be occurring at a different rate. Cool? Makes sense? What questions do you have? Yeah,
For the little widget, that would be that'd just be a rotation.
This guy? Yeah, I need to spin him around. My concern about him is I'm not sure if the thing that he rotates around is the anchor point, and the anchor point might not be centered on it. So once I start spinning it, it might spin like this instead of like this. So let's get into that, see how much work I got to do to fix that. But let's finish it. Come on. So that, I'm going to collapse some stuff because it's starting to get overwhelming to me. All right, my disclosure widget. And at frame 0, I want to modify its rotation. And at second 1, I want it to rotate 1 time. No, half a time. Now the problem is I think it just rotated off the screen. Let's see if I'm right. Yeah, it's now sitting over here. Yeah. So see what's happening is that this is its its anchor point, or this is its anchor point, and so it's spinning around that. Okay, unfortunately its position is also based off the anchor point, so I'm going to fix it by moving the anchor point over here to where it needs to rotate around, but it's also going to whack out the motion. But this is just, this happens. So, as annoying it is to me that I didn't get this perfect, at least you see how to problem solve. All right, so there it is. Let's move its anchor point. I'm not animating its anchor point. Let's move it onto itself. There. And then just gotta animate, change its position. Uh, 1047 is the X, and that never changes. So I can just go to 1047. And then Y, it needs to kind of hug this bottom. There. Not exactly perfect, but you get the idea. All right, here we go. Cool, makes sense? Sweet, thanks for catching that. Okay, that's literally what I want you to do, okay? So I know that I've used After Effects a lot longer than most of you guys, but like we just cranked that out in like 40 minutes, okay? And I was talking you through it, right? So if I was just going boom, 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 it's not that hard. The crucial, vital thing that you need to know is the second you're going to be talking about using After Effects, you must set your crap up in whatever the source file is. If you set it all up in Illustrator or Photoshop before you even touch After Effects, your life will be so much easier. So in other words, let's say in Photoshop you have a giant document, and each screen is in a different place in that document. If you tried importing that, even if you named all your layers nicely, if you tried importing all that into After Effects, game over. It's too much work, okay? Instead, make a copy of the Photoshop document or the Illustrator file, which is like what I did. Delete everything you don't want to animate today. So if you want to do all the animation just on one page, like things are sliding and moving, great. If you want to, which is like what I did here, or if you want to have transitions between screens and you want to animate those, great. But just like have just the stuff you need to animate for this one thing. Okay, so let's say you had 3 screens in the assignment to do 3 animations. Okay, so this would be 1. Okay, and so what I would do is have 3 separate After Effects files that are each using 3 separate Illustrator files. And this one is like what I just showed you, where I just constructed it all in Illustrator, everything's stacked on top of itself, it's all named appropriately and detailed so I can keep track of what's what. And then I go into After Effects and I wire it all up and animate it, okay? And then done, move on to the next one. Take my original Illustrator file, duplicate it again, delete everything else I don't care about, smash it all on top of itself, name its layers appropriately, bring in a brand new After Effects file, do all the work. That one's done, put it aside, do the exact same thing. Duplicate my original again, delete all the crap I'm not gonna animate this time around, get it all wired up, name my layers appropriately, bring in After Effects, wire it all up, animate it, done. Make sense? Okay, last step. Those of you that ever use Illustrator or After Effects know this last step. This is a worthless file. This is just an After Effects file. I can't post After Effects files to YouTube, or I guess in theory you could submit After Effects files to me, but it's a pain in the butt. Don't do that, okay? Instead, I just want a QuickTime file, okay? So I just need you to generate an animation. This is not an animation, I need to generate it, so I need to do 2 things. One, I need to clean up my mess a little bit, and then generate the file. So what I mean by clean up my mess, you can see that this compositions timeline is 4 seconds long, even when we're only doing work in the first second. So I'm just to make life easier, it's pretty pointless to have a QuickTime file that's 4 seconds long, but animation's only happening in the first second. So I'm just going to trim it and just say I'm only going to care about the motion up to 1 second. So that's a setting in the composition. And down here it says the duration is not 4 seconds long, it's now 1 second long. Okay. And so now I've cleaned that up. It's only 1 second of animation, and then I need to generate the animation. So you go to File, Export, Add to Render Queue. Now you have to remember what After Effects is used for by most people. Most people are not using After Effects to animate screens for iPhone applications. Most people are using After Effects to do like laser beams in movies and that kind of stuff, okay? So for those kind of applications, how they do their work is all day they'll be spending time animating in After Effects and getting stuff all set up. And then they have a render queue that runs overnight. So they set it while they're away from their desk overnight. It's generating all these high-res graphics, and when they come back in the morning, they see what was done. So that's what the render queue is. For us, it's kind of a silly step because these will take like half a second to build, okay? But I hit Add to Render Queue. This is the render queue. This is the stuff that's going to be built. A couple gotchas. You can see it says need output right here. If you, I'm pretty sure After Effects is nice and won't do this to you anymore. But up until very recently, you could set this all up. You could have 50 things all set up in the render queue and hit go. And if you didn't set the output, it would never save any of it. Okay? So it would just generate all these files and just throw them away. And so you'd have it all set up. At the end of the day, you hit render, you go home, you come back in the morning, and it's done all the work and thrown all of it away for you. How convenient, okay? So that's not what you want, all right? So you need to set the output. So to do that, whoops, go to the render queue and set the output right here where it says not specified. And try to remember how to get to it. Yeah, double click on it, save it where you want to save it to. I'll just save it to my desktop with the same file name. For our purposes, you don't need to run compression or anything like that because they're little short files. So you don't need to mess with any of this other stuff. And then you just hit render. And it goes bloop, 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 bleep. It made the file. Like I said, that's really fast. Go over into my Finder, onto my desktop, and there's the animation file right there. And if I open that in After Effects or in QuickTime, oh, I don't think I can actually open it because I'm recording through QuickTime right now. But you get the idea. It just made my QuickTime file the end. Okay? You're going to take that QuickTime file and upload it. Couple points of that is worth just noting. I think you should do all this After Effects. But if there's some animation that you need to do that you can't do in After Effects, or you have some other tool that you prefer using over After Effects, I've literally done what I just did right there in Keynote before for a client on a computer that I didn't have everything I needed. So it's like, we can do this all in Keynote. And it's not as good, and it's kind of janky, and it's really hard to make changes to later, but it works. And I just screen recorded myself clicking through Keynote, and that was good enough, okay? So like if you have some other tool that you prefer, all I'm asking for is After Effects files, okay? Now I will say this, the only thing I'll do tech support on is After Effects. So if you want to do it in some other tool, you're on your own. On Tuesday, we'll do like a little micro critique, but most of the time on Tuesday will be a work day, so I can help you guys if you get stuck with After Effects. Okay, sound good? Also, I know that most of you are not first year students, so you might not remember. Out on the whiteboard out there, we have all the different tutoring times. And so if you're stuck with After Effects, the foundation stuff does cover 259, which has After Effects in it. So if you need a little bit of tutoring help and you get stuck, you can use that. You can also always grab office hours with me. I noticed, somebody pointed out the other day, there's this administrative debris issue. The link for all IMS office hours that we normally hand out to you guys is broken because we're no longer AIMS, we're now ETBD. So if you want to get to office hours, you got to go to our website and dig through the faculty thing and get to office hours in order to book office hours with me. Which suddenly explains why my office hours have been a lot more sane lately. But maybe I shouldn't tell you how to solve that problem. But there you go. So feel free to grab office hours with me. I know if any of you know Ben Nicholson knows After Effects like the back of his hand, and so he can help you. I'm volunteering him. And then you also got your tutors. Okay, sound good? Sweet. Questions? Yeah.
Say we used a tool that's not like Illustrator, it's Photoshop. Can you still use After Effects?
Yeah, so almost every you totally can. Almost every non-Adobe product, because Adobe's the big dog on campus, that's not a phrase, it's big man on campus, right? Anyway, I'm smashing two phrases together. Because Adobe's so big deal, almost every existing tool will generate some Adobe compliant file. So if you're using Acorn or something like that, you can generate a Photoshop file, a layered Photoshop file, and then bring the layered Photoshop file in. If you're using XD, this is one of those reasons why I'm not a huge fan of XD. XD does not play well with After Effects, which you think it would, considering it's an Adobe product. But you can generate a PDF out of XD, open the PDF in Illustrator, and then from then on out, it behaves like an Illustrator file, where you can name its layers and all that kind of stuff. Okay, cool? Any other questions? Yes?
I'm on XD right now, and when you have like go to file export, it has After Effects, so it just kind of plops it right.
I would love to see how that does. Does it do an okay job?
It has like each piece, and then like
Kick the can on that.
I just did this.
I'm not super wild about it. So if you can make it work, awesome, that's great. Like I've said before, I'm pretty skeptical of all those tools. I'm like a kind of guy that, you know, if I had my druthers, my car would be like for 1976, because I know all the things work and there's no things that can whack it out because it's an established piece of technology. Okay, so any questions? Just a rule of thumb, another building on XD. A rule of thumb, never have mission critical tools be new. Okay, so if you're working on something that is like, it's gotta work for the client, never use a new programming language, never use a new tool, never use something that's mission critical if it's new. New is great for like fun playtime, but it sucks for anything mission critical, which is why you'll see like most people that do this type of work out there, like are still running ancient versions of everything and that kind of stuff, because they're just, it's not because they're stuck in their ways, it's because it's like, it's a known quantity. And if your computer crashes or there's a bug and it doesn't work with the newest version of the OS or whatever, the client doesn't care, right? And so then you're screwed and working on Saturday. And I'd way rather work with an older version of the operating system for 2 years than lose a Saturday. Okay? Cool? Make sense? All right. I love you all. Get to work. We'll break them into groups. I'll upload this video. You'll critique your static stuff. You can ask me other questions, that kind of thing. Sound good? Sweet. Cool.